as I'm well informed, it took you 31 years to find your way to Wijk again.
40 years, actually. I played in 1974, and it's 40 years up to 2014. So I haven't been back for 40 years.
Why did it took you so long?
They didn't invite me back.
And why was that? What was your result in the 1974 tournament?
I played in the Masters group, and I shared third place. Bojan Curaitza won it. I completely forget who came second, and I tied for third place.
Which, for some reason, wasn't good enough to invite you back. But now you're here. Why are you here in 2015?
Well, in the first place, it's one of the world's greatest tournaments and has been for a long time, so it's a pleasure to come. And secondly, Jeroen van den Berg invited me when I was at Gibraltar with him last year, and I was only too happy to accept. And it's great to come back after 40 years and see how much it's grown. It's extraordinary.
How much it grown and how much it changed. Can you give some examples?
Well, for a start, the hotel I stayed in, the Keene down, has been knocked down. It doesn't exist anymore.
Do you know the fate of the hotel?
I guess it was turned into an old folks' home.
Maybe, but at some point there was a big fire and they had completely had to sort of rebuild it.
Oh, that's possible. I didn't know that. But I noticed that when you come out of the Zeedown Hotel now, on the left, there's the largest old folks' home I ever saw in my life. And I wonder if that was where the Keene Down was, but I don't remember so well. I mean, I remember the sea, I remember the dunes, I remember the sand, and I remember the grass growing on the dunes. I remember that very well. It's a bit like Hastings, you know. We've had a tournament in Hastings more or less every year since 1919.
Some people claim it's not the Tata but the Hastings tournament that it's the oldest in the world.
It probably is, because Hastings started in 1895 and it wasn't repeated as a master tournament until 1919 when Capablanca came and won it. And it's been going every year since then, except during the war years, the Second World War, when I think there was one very amateurish tournament, but nothing special. But apart from that, it's been going since 1919. So I think Rule Britannia in that particular case.
Yeah, Rule Britannia, but they don't have like an amateur section of 2,000 participants, I think.
No, the tournament here is much bigger. In fact, I was shocked to see how many people there are here. I couldn't believe...
How many people were there back in 1974?
Not as many as this. Several hundred, I think. But this time it looks like thousands. I mean, you can't move. I mean, it's almost impossible to move. I went into the playing hall and it was almost impossible to move forwards at all. There was an incredible crowd around the Grandmaster section. Every board is taken. You can't even sit down. I mean, it's like a fair or a circus. It's absolutely extraordinary. And the funny thing is that they don't make much noise. It's quite extraordinary that the Grandmasters can play in more or less total silence, and the room's packed with an army. I mean, you could go to Moscow with that army and pretend you were Napoleon.
What are, according to you, the biggest changes in the preparations of the Grandmasters compared with 1974? I mean, I came in a tournament in 1990, and you could still see people, Grandmasters in the bar, but you hardly ever see them. How was that in 74?
The changes are immense. It's actually a completely different game. For a start, as you said, they don't drink so much, if at all. They certainly don't smoke. They're much fitter than the Grandmasters used to be. I mean, many of the Grandmasters then were chain smokers. I can tell some stories about that if you like. And certainly many of them were great drinkers. I've got some stories about that too if you want. Also, the advent of computers, which didn't exist in 1974. I mean, people would have laughed if you'd said computers would be strong in 1974. And now the level of knowledge has increased dramatically. And in fact, we stopped playing matches of humans against computers because we know the computers are going to win. It's pointless. I mean, I even have terrible trouble playing my son's mobile phone on its top level.
And you claim to be a Grandmaster, is what he says.
Well, I think actually most Grandmasters would have trouble with the mobile phones on their very top level. They're really very, very good. They're extraordinary. They're not. I think they're actually stronger than Deep Blue was when he beat Kasparov in 1997. They're amazingly strong. And okay, nobody is going to challenge a computer for the foreseeable future, but they've revolutionized the approach to opening theory. And now, if you play a sharp variation, and some players avoid sharp variations. Normally Magnus, for example, is avoiding sharp variations and well-known variations in the opening. But if you're playing sharp variations like the Sicilian, you have to know an awful lot of theory and you have to memorize it. In fact, I published an article in the Times in London today talking about the importance of memory in top-class chess. And if you can't remember the analysis that's been done by the computers, then you're going to lose all the time in a sharp line. And what Magnus and many of the others do, Kramnik as well, is they choose rather offbeat variations. They do things that are a little bit unusual, and they try to thrust the main impetus of the game into the middle game, or even the ending. Magnus is quite famous for getting not such a great position from the opening, but one where both sides have chances, a position that's not completely dead. And in positions like that, whether he's better or worse, he plays on and on and on and on and on, and usually he manages in the end to win. So I think computers really, really, really influenced opening theory, and quite often now you see top grandmasters playing moves that at first sight are completely irrational. You can't understand them, but the justification lies in oceans and oceans and oceans of pre-game computerized analysis that they've committed to memory and understood.
Okay, this all sounds like Magnus is your tournament favorite right now.
I think Ivanchuk is slightly better placed in the tournament at the moment. His game with Giri is in progress, and I think Giri, for a pawn, has quite a strong attack, so we'll see. Magnus is playing a Chinese girl, Hu Yifan, and I think he's going to win. There's a huge rating difference, so I think he'll win. And so he's closing on Ivanchuk. And I think the critical thing is whether Ivanchuk can keep his nerve, because he's a brilliant player, he's a creative genius, but sometimes he does strange things like losing on time with lots of moves to go in a good position and things like this. If he keeps his nerve, he has good chances, and he's beaten Carlsen before. But Magnus is very steady, and once he gets going, he's remorseless. And usually, perhaps not usually is the wrong word, but quite often he plays one really bad game in a tournament. Well, he's played that. He lost pathetically in one game, and now he's starting not on a roll. He beat Luke van Wheelie, then he beat Caruana and Aronian, and these are the world's best players, and he's beating them in very convincing fashion. So I think Magnus will in fact win it at the end, yeah.
Okay. My final question, do you play chess yourself these days, Raymond?
I've retired from tournament chess. I'm too old. I'm 1,000 years old now. I'm a relic from the past. But what I do is I quite often play simultaneous displays against 20 or 30 people, usually for charity. So to raise money for a hospital or a kids' charity or something like that. But I do a lot of writing, but actually playing in tournaments, I think that was in the past.
Okay. Raymond, thank you very much and enjoy your stay here.